I'm gonna see if I can get into it now. Here. I'm gonna start checking these messages because I seem to get them and I don't even know. So I'm gonna have to go on here and actually check. Ah, thank you, Kira. Why are you chewing your foot? All right. All right, I'm into my Instagram. I'll check. I'll look over those posts. Hey, Great Dane. I was well, I'm pretty good. I just feel kind of sick because, well, I'm supposed to go live at 7, right? But I ended up going live earlier. And so I kind of had to rush. So I ate my dinner really fast and I drank it down with a Diet Coke. I can't make myself burp. So I feel like, overstuffed and tired all of a sudden. I'm sure it'll wear off. Hey, Zuna. This is the life and death of Martha Tabram. She was the second victim, I believe, and we haven't watched that yet. So I was thinking we'll do that, and then um, Gloria. Wait, the first one was Emma Smith. No, Marianne Nichols. Oh, I'm sure I will. Yeah, she was the second one, so we can watch that, and then I'll read more of this. Ugh, I just sat down. Oh, I need my vape. All right, so we'll play this, and then I'll get on to reading.
The Life and Death of Martha Tabram, murdered on August the 7th, 1888. Martha Tabram, or Martha Turner, as she was known at the time of her death, was born
Or Martha
Martha
White.
White on the 10th of May,
What a
1849,
year.
in the Southwark district of South London. She was the youngest of 5 children of Charles and Elizabeth White, and the family home was located at number 17 Marshall Street in Southwark. In May 1865, when Martha had just turned 16, her father abandoned the family and went to live in Pitt Street, Southwark, where he would die on the night of November the 15th of that year.
Wow, look how old that is.
In her late teens, Martha met and began living with Henry Samuel Tabram, a foreman furniture packer who was 13 years her senior. On Christmas Day, 1869, the couple were married at Trinity Church in the Newington district of Southwark. The newlyweds moved into a house at number 20 Marshall Street, just a few doors along from what had been Martha's childhood home, and the couple would have 2 children together, Frederick, born in 1871, and Charles, born in 1872. However, Martha had started drinking heavily, and her drunkenness became a bone of contention in the family.
They all do that. You notice that? They all leave their husbands and they're alcoholics and they turn to prostitution. So I'm wondering if they left their husbands because of the fact that they were alcoholics and they figured they would get kicked out anyways, or they just weren't happy in their lives and they left, um, and then had to turn to prostitution because they had no job.
family
Oh,
home, so much so that in 1875, Henry left her on account of it.
never mind. Should have just watched.
Subsequently, Martha issued a court summons against Henry for desertion, and he agreed to pay her a weekly maintenance allowance of 12
Oh,
shillings.
really?
This he paid regularly, until that is, he learned that she was working
At
as a
least you got them
prostitute,
this time.
and he reduced the allowance to 2 shillings and sixpence, or half a crown. Then, in 1879, he heard that she was living with another man, William Turner, and he stopped the allowance altogether. Thereafter, he only saw her very occasionally, and whenever he did encounter her on the street, she would always accost him for money. The last time he saw her alive was approximately
I don't think so
18
either,
months
Great
before her
Dane.
death, when he met her
Sad.
on Whitechapel Road.
Wow, look at these photos. They're
Having taken up with
amazing.
William Turner, Martha would live with him on and off until 3 weeks before her death in 1888.
Those are
Over the next few
amazing.
years, the couple gravitated to the East End of London, where, like many in the district, they led a transient existence, alternating between rented rooms and the common lodging houses that were so plentiful in the area. Although William was a carpenter, he
Live
found
like
it
that.
difficult.
You know what I mean? I want something that is mine, even if it was like where Bubbles lives, like in a shed. At least it would be mine, and I know I'd have something to sleep in every night and be able to, I don't know, collect things or buy things that are mine. I just couldn't. I couldn't live like that. I couldn't live with the fact that I have to continually worry about where I'm going to sleep that night.
To obtain employment in that trade, and so the couple earned a living as hawkers, selling cheap trinkets, needles and pins, and menthol cones on the streets of London. Martha's favoured pitch at which to hawk her wares
Holy crap! Look, there's Lipton's teas. Wow, that's what I drink.
was Cheapside in the city of London. As far as many who knew the couple were concerned,
Yeah.
they were man and wife, and she was universally known in the district as Martha Turner. However, Martha's drinking continued unabated and also caused problems in her relationship with William Turner. And it has to be said, there was no shortage of pubs in the area in which to quench her thirst. William Turner would later recall that her character for sobriety was not good. If I gave her any money, she generally spent it in drink. In fact, it was always drink. I am a man of sober habits as a rule, and we usually agreed well enough together, as long as she remained sober. But when she got the worse for
Wow.
drink, I left her. There was no
I
quarrel
wonder
then.
why
I
they did
simply
that
left.
though.
It appears, however, that Martha continued to supplement her income with prostitution. At the inquest into her death, William Turner would recall how she was in the habit of staying out late at night. I couldn't say for certain what time she usually came home. When I was with her, it was usually 11 o'clock, except on Saturday night when it was usually 12. The average, I should think, would be about 11 o'clock. When she took to drink, however, I generally left her to her own resources, and I can't answer for her conduct then. In March 1888, Martha rented a room from Mary Bousfield at 4 Star Place, Star Street, off Commercial Road. For this, she paid a weekly rent of 2 shillings, and William Turner would share the room from time to time, presumably on those occasions when he and Martha had not separated on account of her drinking. Mrs. Bousfield also
I don't know. Does anybody know why that is? Why is it that they all turned into? Why are they all alcoholics? What made them turn into alcoholics? Because their husbands weren't. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. What?
noticed Martha's fondness for drink. Although, at the inquest into Martha's death, she was at pains to stress that Martha was never a problem drinker. I have formed no opinion as to whether she was of intemperate habits. She would rather have a glass of ale than a cup of tea, but she was not a woman who got habitually drunk. I myself have never seen her intoxicated. By July 1888, Martha had fallen behind
Hey
with her
guys,
rent,
Eco Gamer.
and 3
Hey,
weeks
Mama
before her
Tree.
death, she suddenly left without giving notice and without paying the arrears that she owed to Mary Bousfield. William Turner went to reside in the workingman's home on Commercial Street, whereas Martha moved into a common lodging house at number 19 George Street in Spitalfields. William last saw Martha alive on the afternoon of Saturday the 4th of August, when he met her at the Aldgate pump, which still stands at the junction of Leadenhall Street and Aldgate High Street. She told him that she had no money, and so he gave her 1 shilling and sixpence to enable her to purchase some stock with which to earn a few halfpence. He later
It's in
estimated
the
that their
drawer that you
encounter
pulled out the
lasted
vitamin C.
around 20
It's in a little
minutes.
bottle.
Having handed over the money, they parted,
Come here and
and he
bring me
would
the
never see her
thermometer when you're
alive
done.
again. The summer of 1888 was a cold and a wet one, and the newspapers were constantly bemoaning the amount of rainfall and the lack of sunshine.
Is that what it is? They had such a rough life that they thought alcohol would make things better, and then they ended up turning into alcoholics, which made their husbands kick them out or leave them. And then, man, that's awful.
There were times when the streets of London became veritable quagmires, and few people could remember a worse summer. The bank holiday Monday of the 6th of August saw no let-up in the miserable conditions, and although the rain held off till the evening, the dark sky and prevailing coldness rendered the usual bank holiday outdoor pursuits unappealing, to say the least. It is not known how Martha Tabram spent what would be the last day of her life. It is known that at some stage on the Monday evening, she met with fellow prostitute Mary Ann Connolly, better known in the district as Pearly Poll, and the two went drinking together. Although Connolly insisted that the two were friends, none of Martha's close associates appears to have known anything about Pearly Poll. Connolly also stated that she knew the victim as Emma, not as Martha. Connolly would later give conflicting accounts of their movements on that night, and it is therefore difficult to establish an exact timeline of how the evening unfolded. She told the police that they met in a pub at 11 p.m. and that they drank in that pub until 11:45. However, she told the inquest into Martha's death that they met up at 10 p.m. and then went drinking in several pubs around the area. Of course, it is more than possible that Connolly's memory of the evening may have been addled by the amount of drink she had consumed, and recalling the exact sequence of events on the alcohol-fueled night may have proved difficult for her. At 11 p.m, Martha was seen entering the White Swan pub on Whitechapel High Street by her sister-in-law, Anne Morris, and according to Anne's inquest testimony, Martha was on her own. It is therefore possible that Martha met Mary Ann Connolly in the White Swan pub at 11 p.m. According to Connolly, they met two soldiers and were more than happy to allow the men to buy their drinks for them. A little before midnight, the four left the pub and headed off along Whitechapel High Street, where they split into couples at the entrance to George Yard. Mary Connolly and her soldier headed for the next alleyway along, Angel Alley, a dark and a sinister little thoroughfare which still exists today and which still possesses a truly menacing and threatening ambience. Martha Tabram went with her soldier into George Yard, an equally dark and ominous thoroughfare, which also still exists, albeit its name has now been changed to Gunthorpe Street. As she entered, she would certainly have passed the pub that stands on the left, the White Hart.
Last time that Whitechapel was changed to a new name because of the Ripper,
which had been built in the 18th century. A little way past the White Hart, also on the left, there still stands a sturdy building which has now been divided into flats. It still has the year of its construction, 1886, emblazoned above its upper level. In 1888, this was Sir George's home for respectable girls, part of the George Yard mission, which had been established here in 1856 by local provisions merchant turned evangelist Sir George Holland. Martha would have passed this building as she made her way along George Yard in the early hours of that morning, little realizing the danger she was now in. According to the East London Advertiser, George Yard was one of the most dangerous streets in the locality. But for a seasoned streetwalker like Martha Tabram, it offered a reasonable amount of privacy in which to conduct business. Towards the top of George Yard, on the left, there stood an apartment block known as George Yard Buildings. The residences here were occupied by tenants whom the East London Observer described somewhat unflatteringly as people of the poorest description. When the building's staircase lights were extinguished at 11 p.m, the landings were cast into an impenetrable darkness, which made them ideal for use by prostitutes and their clients. Martha would have been aware of this tucked-away spot, and it was for one of the building's dark and secluded landings that she probably made her way with the soldier. Of course, it is now impossible to establish if that soldier was her killer or whether a later client carried out the foul deed.
And what we see is no surprise.
There was a fair amount of activity around George Yard in the early hours of the morning of the 7th of August. At 1:40 a.m, Elizabeth and Joseph Mahoney, who were residents of George Yard Buildings, arrived home, having spent the bank holiday with friends. Almost immediately, Elizabeth went out again to purchase supper from a chandler's shop on nearby Thrall Street. Returning 5 minutes later, she passed the very spot where Martha's body would be found a few hours later and saw nothing,
Fever.
although she did concede that the body may have been lying
Or
there in the
relax, I'll call
gardens
the school.
and she simply hadn't noticed it.
It's
At around 2
like,
a.m., police constable Thomas
Hey there,
Barrett
hi
was
guy.
patrolling his beat along Wentworth Street. At the entrance to George Yard, he noticed a soldier loitering there. He remarked to the man that it was quite time he was in barracks, to which the soldier replied that he was waiting for a comrade who had gone with a woman to a building close at hand. Barrett appears to have accepted this without question and continued
You
on
don't
his
feel
way.
like
it's just my sinuses
At
and
3:30 a.m., 21-year-old cab driver
that's what
Alfred
happened last
George
time.
Crow
Remember, it was
returned to his home in George Yard Buildings. As he went up the stairs, he noticed somebody lying on the first floor landing. But because he often found people sleeping on the landings, he paid so little attention to the prone form that he was unable to state whether it was a man or a woman, or for that matter, whether the person was alive or dead. At 4:45 a.m., John Saunders Reeves, a casual waterside labourer, left his room on the top
sorry,
floor
my
of
kid's
George
sick.
Yard Buildings and headed out to work. Descending the stairs on the first floor landing, he found the body of a woman lying on her back in a pool of blood. Immediately, he ran to fetch the police and found Police Constable
What are you
Thomas
up to now?
Barrett in the vicinity of George Yard. He brought the constable back to the scene, and Barrett immediately sent Reeves to fetch the nearest medic.
Actually, I'll
Timothy
make you that
Colleen, from
vitamin
Brick
C
Lane.
drink.
Arriving at the scene, Colleen examined the woman and immediately pronounced life extinct. He then gave it as his opinion that she had been brutally murdered. He also took the opportunity to examine the woman and noted 39 stab wounds that had pepper-potted the body from the throat down to the lower abdomen. In addition, he was of the opinion that 2 types of blade had been used on the woman. The majority of the frenzied attack, he said, had been committed with a short blade, something like a pocket knife or a penknife, whereas the death blow had been dealt to the sternum by a long, strong blade, something like a dagger or a sword bayonet. He also stated that there were no signs that recent intimacy had taken place, thus ruling out rape as a motive. With the doctor's grim business completed, the body was placed onto a police ambulance, which in reality was little more than a wooden handcart, and was trundled off through the streets to the mortuary of the nearby Whitechapel Workhouse Infirmary. The first task faced by the police was identifying the victim. They soon ascertained that she was unknown to any of the residents of George Yard Buildings, so they released a description of her to the newspapers. They also photographed the body in the mortuary, and this photograph was then reproduced and handed out to beat officers and detectives working the case, who then showed it around the district in the hope that somebody would identify the George Yard victim. An important line of inquiry for the police was trying to ascertain the identity of the soldier whom Police Constable Barrett had encountered at the Wentworth Street entrance into George Yard on the morning of the murder. To that end, he was taken to the Tower of London on 2 occasions, and the soldiers there were paraded before him in the hope he could identify the man he had seen. He was, however, unable to identify him. Meanwhile, 3 people had come forward to identify the victim, having been shown the woman's photograph by the police. Unfortunately, they all gave her a different name. One said she was a Mrs. Withers, one that she was a Mary Bryan, and one said that she was Martha Turner. The confusion over her identity was such that when the inquest into her death was opened at the Working Lads Institute on Whitechapel Road on Thursday the 9th of August 1888, although the victim was believed to be Martha Turner, there was no actual certainty that this was in fact the case. Of course, since there was doubt over the victim's actual identity, there was little point continuing with the inquiry into her
Sorry
death
about
until
that.
it could be
Sorry,
ascertained
Judge.
beyond
Mister.
doubt whose death the inquest was actually being held over. Having taken evidence from Elizabeth Mahoney, Alfred George Crow, John Saunders Reeves, and Dr. Colleen, the Deputy Coroner, George Collier, with what the East London Observer described as unusual animation, concluded that it is one of the most terrible cases that anyone can possibly imagine. The man must have been a perfect savage to have attacked the woman in that way.
Ooh, that crap's gross.
So saying, he adjourned the inquest.
So my son is he said yesterday that his throat hurt, and we went out, and then he said it was gone, so I didn't think anything of it. But then, like, within the past hour, he said he could hear it in his voice that he's got a cold, so we're all taking these vitamin C pills, and we're taking the vitamin C shots. What those are, it comes in a package, and it's, I can't remember what the hell it's called. Oh, it's called Emergency for, vitamin C. So there's a lot in it. So it's powder. You just you mix it, but I didn't put a full thing of water. I just put a little bit because it tastes like I don't know, like very watered down orange juice with fizz. It's gross. You can't. You really want this, cat? Really? No, you don't. Trust me, it's nasty.
Request for 14 days in order that a positive identification might be made and to give the police time, if possible, to trace the perpetrator of the crime.
She's running.
On the 9th of August, Mary Ann Connolly walked into Commercial Street Police Station and told the police about hers and Martha's bank holiday night drinking spree with the soldiers. The police took her very seriously as a witness, and 2 identity parades were held, one at the Tower of London and one at the Wellington Barracks in Pimlico, where the troops were paraded before her, and she was asked if she recognised any of them as the 2 men that she and Martha had been drinking with. Although she did pick out 2 men, they both proved cast-iron alibis for the bank holiday night and were quickly eliminated from the investigation. Thereafter, the police became very dubious of any further statements made by Pearlie Poll. On the day of the inquest, William Turner was hawking in Leather Lane when some friends of his informed him of the proceedings over in Whitechapel.
Great appetite.
He duly got in touch with the police.
So this is called Leather Lane. Wow. This was where Leather Apron apparently was working. This guy kind of stands out a bit. I don't know why, but it feels like he does. He's probably a man in black. Alien.
And on being taken to the mortuary, was able to identify the deceased as the woman he had been involved with for the last 9 years. It would appear that William Turner notified the authorities that Martha was in fact still married to Henry Tabram, and so the newspapers began publishing her correct name as Martha Tabram. Henry Tabram learnt of Martha's death on Monday the 13th of August, when he saw the name of the George Yard victim described in the papers as Tabram. He contacted the police the next day, and on being taken to the mortuary, he identified the victim as his estranged wife, Martha Tabram.
Leland, chug it! Trust me.
The positive identification meant that Deputy Coroner George Collier could now resume the inquest, which he did on the afternoon of Thursday the 23rd of August, 1888, again at the
This is how my book reads, exactly this. It's probably from that book.
Working Lads Institute on Whitechapel Road. Having heard testimony from several witnesses, the Deputy Coroner summed up by telling the jury that he was sorry that the efforts of the police to find the murderer had been fruitless so far. He went on to state that it was a most horrible crime and showed that the deceased had been the victim of a fiend. They could only come to the conclusion that the woman had been foully and brutally murdered by some person or persons unknown. That, he said, must be their verdict, and the police would do what they could still to trace the murderer. The jurors duly returned a verdict of willful murder by some person or persons
That's their excuse
unknown.
for every single murder.
They also added a recommendation.
Is it's done by a person or persons unknown. There's like, they never found out.
That the stairs of George Yard buildings and other similar dwellings in the neighbourhood should be lit after 11 o'clock at night. The viciousness of the killing, coupled with the fact that it had been carried out without anybody hearing a sound, was the subject of considerable puzzlement and disquiet around the area in the days and weeks that followed. The Evening Advertiser commented, "The circumstances of this awful tragedy are not only surrounded with the deepest mystery, but there is also a feeling of insecurity to think that in a great city like London, the streets of which are continually patrolled by police, a woman could be foully and horribly killed."
I don't know, Teresa. So I got today the other book I was telling you and Zuna about, and Deb, oh my god, I can't remember the name of it. Where the hell is it? So the first book I was reading, Letters to the Loony Bin, right? So I was like, okay, there's got to be more. So I found one, and it's this one, The Lives They Left Behind. And it's suitcases from a state hospital attic. So here's the book. This one's a lot thicker. It's all actually like legit. There's video. Yeah, there's a video in here. There's photos and everything of the doctors, the nurses, the patients, you name it. That's pretty cool. 1927. Why the hell is there kids there? Or am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong. Oh my god. That's 19 what did I say, 72? There's photos throughout the book. It's look at that, a child being grabbed by a nurse. Oh my god. Anyways, I'm gonna start that tomorrow. Or I don't know. I don't know if I should just finish the Ellie Bly one and then get into this one. Yeah, maybe I better do that.
Almost next to the citizens peacefully sleeping in their beds without a trace or clue being left of the villain who did the deed. There appears to be not the slightest trace of the murderer, and not a clue has at present been found.
Oh shit.
Today, there is considerable debate as to whether or not Martha Tabram was a victim of Jack the Ripper. It should be noted that the majority of the police officers at the time appear to have believed that she was.
Oh, that dog of yours, I'm telling
Inspector
you.
Walter Dew, who had been transferred to the Metropolitan Police's
I hope
H
it'll be
Division
okay.
in 1887, and who was therefore one of the detectives who worked on the case, later stated in his autobiography, "There can be no doubt that the August Bank Holiday murder, which took place in George Yard Buildings, was the handiwork of the Dread Ripper." The truth is that with the passage of more than 100 years and the disappearance of so much of the evidence, the only thing we can say for certain about the Jack the Ripper murders is that nothing is certain. On the face of it, Martha Tabram's injuries were not consistent with the mutilations sustained by the later victims,
See,
who
now
are
this
now
one I was
generally
wondering because
considered
I
to
had
be
that.
the 5 canonical
She
victims.
was definitely stabbed in the face. I seen that in the book as well. Like, look at it. Looks like she was stabbed in the face to me. There's 3, 4, 5. Even there.
Mutilations sustained by the later victims, who are now generally considered to be the
Like, look at it. Unless there are moles.
5 canonical victims of Jack the Ripper. Yet significantly, her killer had targeted Martha's throat and lower
Looks like a
abdomen,
clown.
just as Jack the Ripper would do with his victims. It is therefore possible that Martha Tabram, murdered in the early hours of August the 7th, 1888, on the dark first-floor landing of George Yard Buildings, was the first victim to die at the hands of Jack the Ripper.
Ooh.
The significance of her murder, however, cannot be underestimated, for it began to focus the minds of the police, the press, and the public at large that something decidedly untoward was occurring in Whitechapel, and a wave of general unease began to ripple through the district. Thus, when 3 weeks later the mutilated body of Mary Nichols was discovered, again lying on her back with her skirts pulled up around her waist and in an almost identical pose to that of Martha Tabram's body, the realization began to dawn.
That's what confused me when they said that Mary Ann Nichols was the first victim. I'm like, no, it was Emma Smith and then it was Martha Tabram. So, but they're only counting this one for sure is the Ripper, and the other two, this one, Martha Tabram, and Emma Smith as probably from the Ripper, because it's the same thing. It's like he was started with these three, and then he got more vicious. He was taking parts of them.
That a repeat killer was loose in the streets of Whitechapel. For the people of the Victorian East End, their autumn of terror was about to begin.
Of syphilis or even AIDS, because that was the spots. They had spots too. Brown, like it looks like cancer. Oh, that poor dog. You would think that she would learn, but hair, skin, organs, it's a nasty. Lesions, yeah. Isn't syphilis sexually transmitted? Kaposi sarcoma, it is cancer. Oh, okay. This is followed by 3 handwritten pages, unsigned, but apparently a copy of the Home Office letter querying the police reports. A statement has been made by a man named Schwartz to the effect that he had heard a person who was pulling about a woman, identified as Elizabeth Stride, 15 minutes before the murder of Burner Street took place, call out Lipsky to an individual who was on the opposite side of the road. It does not appear whether the man used the word Lipsky as a mere ejaculation, meaning in mockery, I am going to Lipsky the woman, or whether he was calling to a man across the road by his proper name. In the latter case, assuming that the man was using the word was the murderer must have an acquaintance in Whitechapel named Lipsky. Yeah, it didn't come out back then. I should know that. I did a thing on it. That's what happens when you get a stroke. Yeah, it was the 80s. It was like 88 or 89 and like full blown 90s. It was crazy. So we're still on the murder of Elizabeth Stride. Mr. Matthews presumes that this clue has been one of the suggestions with regard to which searching inquiries have been made, although no tangible results have been obtained as regards the detection of the murderer, but he will be glad if he can be furnished with a report as to any investigations made to trace the man Lipsky. They're saying this man might be named Lipsky, but it's actually a derogative term for a Jew. Yeah, I did. Um, yeah, in 2008, I was 24. I had bacterial meningitis, and that's like where um you get fine holy frig, you get fluid on your brain. Um I can't, you just get really sick. So I was always throwing up. I always was sick, 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 sick. And I just remember the pressure in my brain. Like I knew something was wrong, but I didn't think it was that bad. Oh my God. It was horrible. Glad I went to work that day because within 45 minutes, I had a stroke. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. It was the scariest thing that ever happened. You literally can't use your words. Like, if I wanted to say, call 911 to be like, you can't talk. Like your brain and it just, and now because of that, I have a huge memory problem and a lot of disabilities. That's just sucks. Another question has arisen on the reports furnished by you. Reference is made to 3 insane medical students, and it is stated that 2 have been traced and that 1 has gone abroad. Mr. Matthews would be glad to be informed of the date when the 3rd student went abroad and whether any further inquiry has been made about him. What this letter reveals is the degree to which the Home Office was following the police inquiries to the series of murders and their growing impatience for results. With regard to the witness Packer, a report dated 4th October 1888 by Inspector Henry Moore states, subject is Whitechapel murders. Oh, thank you. You had one when you were 4. Doesn't it mess with your memory? I mean, I can't make new memories. Like I always won spelling bees and everything else. I've always been really, really smart. I just since I had the stroke, I can't make new memories. People will tell me things or say things to me, and I get pissed off because I can't remember. So I end up taking it on them and saying, "You're a liar. Don't just because you know I can't remember things doesn't mean you get to lie." And it turns out most of the time it's true. It did happen or something was said, but there's times like my son's dad used to do that to me. He was the only one that did, but he would say stupid shit and be like, "Yeah, you did." It's like, "No, I didn't. Just because you know I can't remember, like, stop." And then he uses it against me and say, "Oh, don't play like you don't remember." It's like, "Holy, you're the love of my life, all right." Yes. It was funny because Rob ended up sending me a photo of Squirrel Girl, the doll. Oh my god. Yes, that's why I do that. I can't stay on topic. I can't.
I can't make new memories. I remember things from before the stroke. I remember everything. And then now, like, I know I have to do a bunch of things, and if I don't write them down, I won't do them. Like, for instance, I have to call my son's school. I know I'll forget. I have to call the income tax, get it done. I have to call about the statement that I don't think I got if it was sent or not. There's a couple other things. Hey, at least I finally got my taps fixed and my shower tap fixed in the bathroom and the kitchen. I got that done yesterday. And then I got all those boxes from the exterminator for my rat problem. So everything's all that finally I remembered to do. So it's been a lot better that way. Hey, Jen. You forget a lot and didn't have a stroke? It could be from what the other ailments you have though too, Teresa. Oh shit, really? I've never had to write things down ever. I was always smart, like yeah, with articulating and stuff like that. You said you didn't know this. Your English is impeccable. You would not know it at all. I think maybe that's because I've read since I don't know, like grade 4, and I've just loved books. I always read, so I learn the words as I go. Whereas if I was just starting, I would botch all of this. Yep, and I have a problem with speech too. I'll say things that don't even make sense and I'll say them backwards. Like I was pissed off one day and I tried to tell someone F you and instead I said yuck foo. Like really? I said something to Lena. I can't remember what the hell it was, of course. But he's like, "What?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I'm like, "I don't know what I just said, but ignore it." No, silly. I meant like your lymphedema. Wow, I can't believe that's what it is, right? Yeah, he's sick, all right. Hold on. He just grabbed a bowl of cereal and now he won't shut up. Yeah, yuck, foo. Like, just whatever. There's many more. No, I'm alive. I'm not gonna shush. I have problems with speech, but that's because I got tongue-tied. Really? I'm live. Don't be such a meanie. I swear I will throw that cereal out. See, off topic. My God. It's like ADHD, but I don't have that. You're blaming it on getting old. That could be. Yeah, or old though. Okay, so the subject is Whitechapel murders, a reference to papers. Referring to attached extract from second edition Evening News of this date. I beg to report that as soon as above I feel like I'm gonna burp. Sorry. I beg to report that as soon as above came under my notice, I at once, in the absence of Inspector Aberline at CO, directed P.S. White H to see Mr. Packer, the shopkeeper, refer to and take him to the mortuary with a view to the identification of the woman, Elizabeth Stride, who it is stated was with a man who purchased grapes at his shop on night of 29th. The P.S. returned at noon and acquainted me, as in a report attached, in the consequence of which telegram number 1 was forwarded to Chief Inspector Swanson and the P.S. sent to CO to fully explain the facts. Telegram number 2 was received at 12:55 p.m. from Assistant Commissioner RE, same subject, in reply to which telegram number 3 was forwarded. The report written by Sergeant Stephen White concerning the witness Packer is dated 4th October 1888. With reference to attach extract from Evening News of the 4th, I beg to report that acting under the direction of Inspector Aberline, I in company with PC Dolden, CI Department, made inquiries at every house in Burner Street, Commercial Road on 30th, in a view to obtain information respecting the murder. Any information that I could obtain, I noted in book supplied to me for that purpose. About 9 a.m., I called at 44 Burner Street and saw Matthew Packer, fruitier in a small way of business. I asked him what time he closed the shop. On the previous night, he replied, 12:30. And there's a note in the margin again. It says 11:30 and a question mark. In consequence of the rain, it was no good for me to keep open. I asked him if he saw anything of a man or a woman going into Dukefield's yard, or saw anyone standing about the street about the time he was closing his shop. He replied, "No." I said, "No one's standing there. Neither did I see anyone go up the yard. I never saw anything suspicious or heard the slightest noise, and know nothing about the murder until I heard it in the morning. I also saw Mrs. Packer, Sarah Harris, and Harry Douglas residing in the same house, but none of them could give the slightest information respecting the matter. On 4th, I was directed by Inspector Moore to make further inquiry, and if necessary, see Packer and take him to the mortuary. I then went to 44 Burner Street and saw Mrs. Packer, who informed me that 2 detectives had called and taken her husband to the mortuary. Can you imagine being taken there? I mean, I don't know. Just random people all on the blocks and be like, "Hey, come on, let's go look at this poor dead girl. Let me know if you seen her that night." I mean, that's just wow. Part of my job is making peer-to-peer calls. I must have had at least one today while laid up. I told him I can't make them anymore. I can't sound like I'm drunk. Oh shit, yeah. Sick D suck. I then went towards the mortuary when I met Packer with a man. I asked where he had been. He said this detective asked me to go see if I could identify the woman. I said, "Have you done so?" He said, "Yes. I believe she bought some grapes at my shop about 12 o'clock." So there's another thing. How the hell does a prostitute afford grapes? I guess they were really, really expensive back then. But to have the wisdom we have now. Yeah. And then in the margin, there's a note again with question mark on Saturday. So she bought some grapes at my shop about 12 o'clock. And then the note in the margin is 11 with a question mark, and then it says on Saturday. Shortly afterwards, they were joined by another man. I asked the men what they were doing with Packer, and they both said that they were detectives. I asked for their authority. One of the men produced a card from a pocketbook, but would not allow me to touch it. He then said that they were private detectives. They then induced Packer to go away with them. About 4 p.m., I saw Packer at his shop while talking to him. The 2 men drove up in a hansom cab, and after going into the shop, they induced Parker to enter the cab, stating that they would take him to Scotland Yard to see Sir Charles Warren. Like getting tongue tied like that. Yeah. On inquiry I've made, there is no doubt that these are the 2 men referred to in attached newspaper cutting who examined the drain in the Dukefield's yard on the 2nd. One of the men had a letter in his hand addressed to Legrand and Co. Strand. Stephen White, Sergeant. Extract from Star newspaper attached. Respectfully submitted by Inspector Aberlin and T. Arnold, Superintendent. There then follows a 2-page summary in the hand of Mr. Alexander Carmichael Bruce, Sr., Assistant Commissioner, give details of what Packer had to say. Matthew Packer keeps a shop in Burner Street, has a few grapes in the window, black and white. On Saturday night about 11 p.m., a young man from 25 to 30, about 5'7", with long black coat buttoned up, soft felt hat, kind of Yankee hat, rather broad shoulders, rather quickly in speaking, rough voice. I sold him half a pound of black grapes. And she was found with black grapes. That's Teresa. A woman came up with him from back church end, the lower end of the street. She was dressed in black frock and jacket, fur round bottom of jacket, a black crepe, sorry, bonnet. She was playing with a flower like a geranium. White outside and red inside. I actually looked those up. They're pretty. Making me crave grapes. I just ate all mine. I identified the woman at the St. George's mortuary as the one I saw that night. They passed by as though they were going to up Com Road, but instead of going up, they crossed to the other side of the road to board school and were there for about half an hour, till I should say 11:30, talking to one another. I then shut up my shutters. Before they passed over opposite to my shop, they wait near to the club for a few minutes, apparently listening to music. I saw no more of them after I shut up my shutters. The way they speak is a little off too, so it kind of catches me off. I put the man down as a young clerk. He had a frock coat on, no gloves. He was about 1.5 inch or 2 or 3 inches a little higher than she was. The Home Office records are filed under a minuted cover dated 25th October 1888. Thanks, Commissioner. Sorry. Forward's full report as to steps taken to detect the perpetrators of these murders. Thanks, Commissioner, for report, and ask what part of, if any, Met Police, the Metropolitan Police, I'm assuming, took in Edo's murder. This is the murder in which writing was rubbed out, and it is essential for Home Office to know exact facts as to this. Also ask City Commissioner for a report of action taken by City Police in regard to Edo's and other murders. Also ask Commissioner for a map showing locality and position for the murders. To Mr. Matthews, I enclose also newspaper extracts, past inquests, on 25th October 1888. The statement of Schwartz that a man who was in the company of Elizabeth Stride before she was found dead and who threw her down, addressed a companion as Lipsky, seems to furnish a clue and ought to be followed up. The number of Lipskys in Whitechapel must be limited. If one of them were identified by Schwartz, it might lead to something of importance. Mr. Murdoch, please see Mr. Wortley's pencil memo on Sir C. Warren's letter with a question mark. Shall the police be asked at the same time for the report as to what has become of the third insane medical student from the London hospital, about whom, under the name of doctor, there's a good deal of gossip in circulation? The first letter, enclosed and dated 29th October 1888, and is to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. And it was stamped confidential. Thank you, Great Dan. Sir, with a reference to your letter of the 24th, enclosing a report as to the steps taken to detect the perpetrator of recent murders in Whitechapel, I am directed by the Secretary of State to say that he observes that a statement had been made by a man named Schwartz to the effect that he had heard a person who was in the company of, that was deleted, pulling about a woman identified as Elizabeth Stride 15 minutes before the murder off Berners Street took place. Speaking was deleted. Call out Lipsky to an individual who was on the opposite side of the road by the name of Lipsky, and that was deleted. Mr. Matthews presumes that that was deleted. It does not appear, they literally, like, this whole book is everything. So they even tell you what was deleted, what was scratched out. Leland, shut it! As mere Lipsky was used, that was deleted. As mere ejaculation, meaning in mockery, I am going to use Lipsky, the woman, or whether he was calling to a man across the road by his proper name. In the latter case, assuming that the man using the word was the murderer must have an acquaintance in Whitechapel named Lipsky. Or he could have presumed that the person was a Jew and then called him that derogatory name. Mr. Matthews presumes that this clue has been one of the suggestions with regard to which searching inquiries had been made, although no tangible results have been obtained as regards the detection of the murderer, but he will be glad if I can be furnished with a report as to my investigations made to trace the man Lipsky. Another question has arisen on the reports forwarded by the Commissioner, that was deleted, and just says forwarded by the you. That's stupid. Another question has arisen on the reports forwarded by the commissioner. That sounds great, right? Instead, they deleted commissioner and said, another question has arisen on the reports forwarded by the U. Reference is made to 3 insane medical students. It is stated that 2 have been traced and that 1 has gone abroad. Mr. Matthews would be glad to be informed of the date when the 3rd student went abroad and whether any further inquiry has been made about him. Wrote accordingly. That's all I said for him. The next letter on the file is dated 24th October 1888 to the Under Secretary of State from Sir Charles Warren. It says confidential and then they deleted it. And it was stamped Home Office 25, October 1888. Across the top of the page is a note with a question mark. Ask when the insane student mentioned on page 6 of Annie Chapman papers went abroad. October 24th for Whitehall Place. And then it says 60, and that was deleted for the first thing in there. Then it says, Sir, with reference to your letter of the 13th, instant asking that Mr. Secretary Matthews may be supplied with a report of all the measures which have been taken for the detection of the perpetrator of the Whitechapel murders and of the results. I have to transmit the information of the Secretary of State, copies of a minute by Mr. Anderson on the subject, and of reports by Chief Inspector Swanson, which I directed to be prepared on my return from abroad early in September. Very numerous and searching inquiries have been made in all directions, and with regard to all kinds of suggestions which have been made, these have had no tangible result. So as far as regards the Whitechapel murders, but information has been obtained, which will no doubt be useful in the future in detecting cases of crime. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, C. Warren. The next report is dated 23rd October 1888. And it is signed by Robert Anderson. And it stated the Whitechapel murders with a huge black line underneath. Cysts. Notice how we get talking about strokes and stuff, and then none of us can talk, right? I think we jinxed ourselves. The Whitechapel murders. At the present stage of the inquiry, the best reply that can be made to the Secretary of State's request for a report upon these cases is to send the accompanying copy of detailed reports prepared by Chief Inspector Swanson, who has special charge of the matter at this office. Not only do I get tongue-tied, I get crazy fingers. Oh my god, aren't we all a piece of work here? I wish to guard against it. I wish to guard against its being supposed that the inquiry is now concluded. There is no reason for furnishing these reports at this moment, except that they have been called for. That a crime of this kind should have been committed without any clue being supplied by the criminal is unusual. But that 5 successive murders should have been committed without or having the slightest clue of any kind is extraordinary, if not unique, in the annals of crime. The result has been to necessitate our giving attention to innumerable suggestions, such as would in any ordinary can be dismissed. What? The result has been to necessitate our giving attention to innumerable suggestions, such as would, in any ordinary case, be dismissed unnoticed, and no hint of any kind, which was not obviously absurd, has been neglected. Moreover, the activity of the police has been to a considerable extent wasted through the I don't even know what that word was. Exgenics? No, that's not it. Oh, they're trying to say agencies. They spelt it wrong. So, the considerable extent wasted through the agencies of sensational journalism, and that the action of unprincipled persons who, from various motives, have endeavored to mislead us. But on the other hand, the public, generally and especially the inhabitants of the East End, have shown a marked desire to assist in every way, even at some sacrifice to themselves, as for example, in permitting their houses to be searched, as mentioned in at page 10 of the last report. The vigilance of these officers engaged on the inquiry continues unabated. That's from R. Anderson, October 23rd, 1888. At this stage, there is an index to the contents of the file dated 19th October, 1888. And this says copy. And then it's the whole subject and the remarks again. Hey, Deb. See, this confusing me because it doesn't really make sense. They're just writing points down, like murder date and hour of DM shifts, Lewis doctors, examination, men seen with deceased. And that's the subject. So there's a whole thing of subjects here. Descriptions compared. Inquiries by police. R.E. Socialists, Burner Street, Slaughtermen, house to house, common law, sailors, Ajax, I don't even know. The fuck are they trying to say here? Persons detained, suspected, leaflets to Occupier Detectives Private Alliance, Gypsies Creek, Greek Cowboys, dockets on Mitre Square murder, 19th October, 1888. And then the remarks of all this crap, it says, discovered the body, Dr. Phillips and Brown, Smith and Israel Swartz, with man seen with Mitre Square victim, belonging to club in Burner Street, in Aldgate, Whitechapel neighborhood. Boundary of area given, 2,000 lodgers seen up to date by the Thames police at homes and opium dens, and liberated for after satisfactory inquiry upwards of 300 whose movements inquired into. 80,000 issued, making inquiry at instance of Bidgeconti, whatever that means. As to presence in London, traced and satisfactorily accounted for. Number of, then it says within jurisdiction of the police. This is from Donald S. Swanson. So these are literally just notes. Oh my God. How does a puppy get meningitis? I knew she was having issues. How does wow, I thought it was just like, I've had it, but how does an animal get it? She didn't say. I know she wrote to me about that. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to go message her and see if she's all right. Another one. The next file cover is dated 6th November 1888. Stamped Home Office 7. References to Whitechapel murders. Reports as to the way the name of Lipsky was used with reference to Swartz's evidence. The name is now used as a I don't even know what the hell they're trying to say there. These words are so backwards. Was used as reference to Swartz's evidence. The name is now used in addressing or speaking of Jews. Okay. Inquiries are made as to John Saunders, the medical student, but without result. There then follows a 2-page report from Sir Charles Warren. It was stamped confidential. Sir, with reference to your letter of the 29th, I have to acquaint you, for the information of the Secretary of State, that the opinion arrived at upon the evidence given by Swartz at the inquest in Elizabeth Stride's case is that the name Lipsky, which he alleges was used by a man whom he saw assaulting the woman in Berners Street on the night of the murder, was not addressed to the supposed accomplice, but to Swartz himself. It appears that, since the Lipsky case had come to be used as an epithet in addressing or speaking of Jews. With regard to the latter portion of your letter, I have to state that searching inquiries were made by an officer in Aberdeen Place, St. John's Wood, the last known address of the insane medical student named John Sanders, but the only information that could be obtained was that a lady named Sanders died reside with her son at number 20, but left that address to go abroad about 2 years ago. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, C. Warren. The Under Secretary of State. This concludes the main file on the Stride murder, as far as the police reports are concerned. However, detailed reports on the inquest appeared in the newspapers. The best overall picture can only be obtained by reading the 2 sets of reports in conjunction, so the reports of the inquest that appeared in the Times follow. Yeah, I bet. Oh, gee. No, she wouldn't be taking it well at all. Neither of them. Wow. Okay, this is gonna be another long chapter. Deb, shut it. Make me. All right, do you guys need to go in timeout for fuck's sake? All right, chapter 8, October 1888, and this is still the Elizabeth Stride inquest. The opening of the inquest on Elizabeth Stride is not covered in the extras contained in the official reports. This is what the author wrote. But the report is to be found in the Times of Tuesday, 2nd October 1888, page 6. The murders at the East End. Yeah, I probably did. I snort a lot. It's a family thing. You get your tongue in your face, miss. I love you guys. So the murders at the East End. Yesterday, Mr. Wynne E. Baxter, coroner for the Social Eastern Division of Middlesex, opened an inquiry at the Vestry Hall, Cable Street, George's in the East, respecting the death of Elizabeth Stride, who was found murdered in a yard in Berner Street on Sunday morning. Detective Inspector E. Reed, H. Division, watched the case on behalf of the Criminal Investigation Department. The jury, having viewed the body, the following evidence was heard. I'm not being mean. Stop. William West, who claimed to affirm that he lived at 40 Berner Street, Commercial Road, and was printer by occupation. He lived in one of those houses on the right hand side of the gateway. Number 40 Berner Street was the International Working Men's Club. On the ground floor, facing the street, was a window and a door, the latter leading into a passage. At the side of the house was a passage leading into a yard, and the entrance to the passage were 2 wooden gates. The foreman says, "Is that right?" The coroner said, "There's a passage before you get to the yard." Witness, continuing, said, "The passage had 2 wooden gates folding backwards from the street. In the northern gate, there was a little door. The gates were sometimes closed and at other times left open all night. When the gates were closed, the doorway was usually locked. They were seldom closed until late at night, when all the tenants had retired. As far as witness knew, no particular person looked after the gates. In the yard on the left-hand side, there was only one house, which was occupied by 2 or 3 tenants. That house contained 3 doors leading to the yard, but there was no other exit from the yard except through the gates. Opposite the gate, there was a workshop in the occupation of Messrs. Hindley Sack Manufacturers. Witness did not believe that there was any exit through the workshop. The manufacturing was on the ground floor, and he believed the ground floor of the premises was unoccupied, adjoining Messrs. Hindley's premises there was a stable, which he believed was unoccupied. Passing this stable, a person would come to the premises, forming the club. At this point, the coroner examined a parish map of Berner Street, which showed the yard referred to by the witness. The witness, continuing, said he was not sure that the gardens of the house in Batty Street faced the yard. And then there's a question mark. The club premises ran back a long way into the yard. The front room on the ground floor of the club was occupied as a dining room. At the middle of the passage, there was a staircase leading to the first floor. At the back of the dining room was a kitchen. In this room, there was a small window over the door, which faced in one leading into the yard. The remainder of the passage led into the yard. Over the door in the passage was a small window, through which daylight came. At the back of the kitchen, but in no way connected with it, was a printing office. The office consisted of 2 rooms. The one adjoining the kitchen was used as a composing room, and the other one was for the editor. The compositors on Saturday last left off work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but the editor was there during the day. He was also a member of the club and was either there or in his office until he went home. Opposite the doorway of the kitchen and in the yard were two closets. The club consisted of from 75 to 80 members. Any working man of any nationality could be a member of the club. It was a socialist club. The coroner states, they have to agree to any special principles? Question mark. The witness states, no person is supposed to be proposed as a member unless he was known to be a supporter of the socialist movement. The coroner states, witness worked in the printing office. He remained in the club until about 9 o'clock on Saturday night. He then went out and returned about 10:30. He then remained in the club until the discovery of the deceased. On the first floor of the club was a large room for entertainments, and from that room, 3 windows faced the yard. On Saturday night, a discussion was held in the large room among some 90 or 100 persons. The discussion ceased between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. The bulk of the people present then left the premises by the street door entrance, while between 20 and 30 members remained behind in the large room, and about a dozen were downstairs. Some of those upstairs had a discussion among themselves, while others were singing. The windows of the hall were partly open. Witness left the club about 12:30. He slept at 2 William Street and gave his address as 40 Berners Street, as he worked there all day. The distance from his lodgings to Berners Street was about 5 minutes' walk. Before leaving the club, he had occasion to go to the printing office to put some literature there. He then went into the yard by the passage door, thence to the printing office. He then returned to the club by the same way. As he passed from the printing office to the club, he noticed the yard gates were open and went towards them, but did not actually go up to them. There was no lamp or light whatever in the yard. There were no lamps in Berners Street that could light the yard. The only light that could penetrate into the yard was from the windows of the club or the house that let out in tenements. He noticed the lights in 1 or 2 windows of the latter house. They were on the first floor. When he went into the printing office, the editor was there reading. Noises from the club could be heard in the yard, but there was not much noise on Saturday night. When he went into the yard and looked towards the gates, there was nothing unusual that attracted his attention. The coroner says, can you say there was any object on the ground? The witness said, I cannot say that an object might have been there, and I have not seen it. I am rather short-sighted, but believe that if anything had been there, I would have seen it. The coroner says, what made you look towards the gates? The witness says, because they were open. In further examination, witness said, after he returned to the club, he called his brother, and they both left by the street door and went together home. Another member of the club named Louis Stanley left the club at the same time and accompanied them as far as James Street. Witness did not see anyone in the yard and, as far as he could remember, did not see anyone in Berners Street. They went by way of Fairclough Street, Grove Street, and then to James Street. Witness generally went home from Berners Street between 12 and 1 a.m. On some occasions, he had noticed low women and men together in Fairclough Street, but had not seen any in Berners Street. He had never seen any of these women against his club. After about 12 months ago, he happened to go out into the yard and heard some conversation between a man and a woman at the gates. He went to shut the gates and then saw a man and a woman leave the entrance. That was the only occasion he had ever noticed anything. By the jury says, witness was the overseer of the printing office. Morris Eagle, who also claimed to affirm, stated that he lived at 4 New Road Commercial Road and was traveler in jewelry. He was a member of the International Working Men's Club and was there several times during the day. In the evening, he occupied the chair and opened the discussion. So weird. He opened. Oh my God. In the evening, he occupied the chair and opened the discussion. It's just such weird way to talk. At about 11:45, he left the club for the purpose of taking his young lady home. They left by the front door. He returned to the club about 25 minutes to 1, as he found that the front door The front door closed. He went through the gateway leading into the yard and through the back door leading into the club. As he passed through the yard, he did not notice anything on the ground by the gates. He believed he passed along about the middle of the gateway, which is about 9 feet 2 inches wide. The coroner says, "Can you say if deceased was lying there when you went in?" The witness states, "It was rather dark and I cannot say for certain if anything was there or not. I do not remember whether I met anyone in Burner Street when I returned to the yard. Neither do I remember seeing anyone in the yard." Coroner says, "Supposing you saw a man and a woman in the yard, would you have remembered it?" Witness, "I am sure I would." Coroner, "Did you notice if there was any lights in the house on the left-hand side?" Witness, "I do not remember." The coroner, "Are you often late at night at the club and do you often go into the yard?" Witness says, "I am often there until late, but have seldom gone into the yard. In fact, I have never seen a man or a woman in the yard. On the same side as the club is a beer shop, and I have seen many men and women coming from there." A juryman says, "This is always closed about 9 o'clock." Coroner says, "What were you doing at the club?" The witness says, "As soon as I entered the club, I went to see a friend who was in the upstairs room and who was singing a song in the Russian language. Afterwards, I joined my friend. We sang it together. I had about I had been there about 20 minutes when a member named Gil Gileman came upstairs and said, 'There's a dead woman lying in the yard.' I went down in a second and struck a match. I could then see a woman lying on the ground near the gateway and in a pool of blood. Her feet were about 6 or 7 feet from the gate, and she was lying by the side of the club wall, her head being towards the yard. Another member, named Isaac, was with me at the time. As soon as I saw the blood, I got very excited and ran away for the police. I did not touch her." Makes me wonder if this person that's doing this, the Ripper, likes the excitement of knowing that he could get caught at any moment because he does this very publicly, knowing that there's almost like 100 people in this committee that are there that night in this home. All they have to do is look out the window, could see what he's doing. Like, why would you do that? The only thing I can think of is he did it for the excitement of getting caught. Deb. The coroner says, "Did you see if her clothes were disturbed?" Witness says, "I could not say. When I got outside, I saw Jacobs and another going for the police in the direction of Fairclough Street. I then went to Commercial Road, all the same shouting police. On getting to the corner of Grove Street, I saw 2 constables and told them that a woman had been murdered in Burner Street. They returned with me to the yard. I then noticed several members of the club and some strangers were there. A constable threw his light on the body and then told the other officer to go for a doctor and sent me to the station for the inspector." The coroner says, "Did you see anyone touch the body?" Witness says, "I think the policeman touched it, but the other persons appeared afraid to go near it. When I first saw the body of the deceased, I should say it was about 1 o'clock, although I did not look at the clock." In answer to the foreman of the jury, the witness further said he could not remember how far from the wall the body was lying. On Saturday evening there were free discussions at the club for both men and women. Anyone could go in. On Saturday night there were some women there, but those he knew. He should say there were not more than 6 or 8 women present. Saturday was not a dancing night, although after the discussion was ended, some dancing might have been carried on. Had a cry of murder been raised, he believed they would have heard it, or even any other cries of distress. Witness had never been in the stable or in Hindley's working shop, and could not say for certain whether there was any other exit from the yard except through the gateway. I see nothing but love. Louis Diemsuch. No. Come on, mouth, you can say it. Diemscuts deposed that he lived at 40 Burner Street and was steward of the club. The correct title of the club was International Working Men's Educational Club. Witness was a married man, and his wife asserted in the management of the club. Witness left home about 11:30 on Saturday morning, and he returned home exactly at 1 o'clock on a Sunday morning. He was certain about the time Witness had with him in Costermonger's barrow, and it was drawn by a pony. The pony was not kept in the yard of the club, but in George Yard, Cable Street. He drove home for the purpose of leaving his goods. He drove into the yard and saw that both gates were wide open. It was rather dark there. He drove in as usual, and as he entered the gate, his pony shied to the left. Witness looked to the ground on his right and saw something lying there, but was unable to distinguish what it was. Witness tried to feel the object with his whip before he got down. He then jumped down and struck a match. It was rather windy, but he was able to get a light sufficient to tell it was a woman lying there. He then went in. Shut it! Well, that Advil kicked in, you can tell. He's like, yeah. Just glad he's feeling better. He then went into the club and saw his wife in the front room on the ground floor. He left his pony in the yard just outside the club door by itself. He told his wife and several members who were in the room that a woman was lying in the yard and that he was unable to say whether she was drunk or dead. He then got a candle and went out into the yard. But the candlelight, he could see that there was blood. He did not touch the body, but at once went off for police. He passed several streets without seeing a policeman and returned with one, although he called out police as loud as he could. A young man whom he had met in Grove Street and told about the murder returned with him. This young man lifted the woman's head up. A witness for the first time saw that her throat was cut. At the same time, the last witness and the constables arrived. When he first approached the club, he did not notice anything unusual and came from the commercial road end of street. Coroner says the doctor arrived about 10 minutes after the police came. No one was then allowed to leave the place until their names and addresses were taken and they had been searched. The clothes of the deceased, as far as he remembered, were in order. Deceased was lying on her side with her face toward the wall of the club. She could not say how much of the body was lying on the side. As soon as the police came, witness went into the club and remained there. The coroner says, "Did you notice her hands?" Witness said, "I did not notice what position her hands were in. I only noticed that the dress buttons of her dress were undone. I saw the doctor put his hand inside and tell the police that the body was quite warm. The doctor also told one of the constables to feel the body, and he did so." The coroner says, Did you notice the quantity of blood about?" Witness states, "The blood ran in the direction of the house from the neck of the woman. I should say there were quite 2 quarts of blood on the ground. The body was lying about 1 foot from the wall. In the yard were a few paving stones, which were very irregular fixed." The coroner says, "Have you not seen men and women in the yard?" Witness says, "I have not." Coroner says, "Have you ever heard of them being found there?" Witness says, "Not to my knowledge." Then the foreman says, or asks, "Was there sufficient room for you to pass the body when you went into the yard?" Witness says, "Yes, and I did so. When my pony shied, I was passing the body and was right by when I got down." Coroner asks, "Did the blood run down as far as the door of the club?" Witness says, "Yes." The foreman asks, "When you went for the police, who was in the charge of the body?" Witness says, "I cannot say, as I saw the blood and I ran off." In answer to Inspector Reed, the witness said everyone who was in the yard was detained. This included the strangers. Their names and addresses were taken, and they were questioned as to their presence there. They were also searched and their hands and clothes examined by Dr. Phillips. It would not have been possible for any person to have escaped while he went into the club. Had any person run up the yard, witness would have been seen. Coroner asks, "Is the body identified yet?" Inspector Reed, "Not yet." Foreman says, "I cannot understand that, as she is called Elizabeth Stride." The coroner says, "That has not yet been sworn to, but something is known of her. It is known where she lived. You had better leave at that point tomorrow more." What? You better you had better leave that point until tomorrow. This stage, the inquiry was adjourned until this afternoon. Details of the resumed inquest appeared in the Times of Wednesday, 3rd October 1888 on page 10. The East End murders. Yesterday afternoon, Mr. Winnie Baxter, coroner of the Southeastern Division of Middlesex, resumed his jury at the Vestry Hall, Cable Street, St. George in the East, respecting the death of Elizabeth Stride, who was found murdered in Berners Street on Sunday morning. Detective Inspector E. Reed, H Division, watched the case on behalf of the Criminal Investigation Department. Police Constable Henry Lamb, 252H, deposed as follows. About 1 o'clock, as near as I can tell, on Sunday morning I was in the commercial road between Christian Street and Batty Street. 2 men came running towards me. I went towards them, heard them say, "Come on, there has been another murder." I said, "Where?" As they got to the corner of Berners Street, they pointed down. As they got to this corner of Berners Street, they pointed down the street. I ran down the street, followed by Constable 426H. I went into the gateway of number 40 Burner Street and saw something dark lying on the right-hand side, close to the gates. I turned my light on, and I found it was a woman. I saw that her throat was cut, and she appeared to be dead. I at once sent the other constable for the nearest doctor, and I sent a young man that was standing by to the police station to inform the inspector that a woman was lying in Burner Street with her throat cut and apparently dead. The coroner asks, "How many people were there in the yard?" The witness says, I should think 20 or 30. Some of that number had followed me in. The coroner asks, was anyone touching the body when you arrived? The witness says no, there was no one within a yard of it. As I was examining the body, some crowded round. I begged them to keep back and told them they might get some of the blood on their clothing, and by that means get themselves in trouble. I then blew my whistle. I put my hand on the face and found it slightly warm. I then felt the wrist, but could not feel the pulse. Coroner asked, "Did you do anything else to the body?" Witness says, "I did not, and you would not allow anyone to get near the body. Deceased was lying on her side, and her left arm was lying under her." The coroner asked, "Did you examine her hands?" The witness says, "I did not, but I saw her right arm was across the breast." No, no worries, Jen. I know what you meant to mention that. Coroner asks how near was her head to the wall. The witness states, "I should say her face was about 5 or 6 inches away." The coroner asks, "Were her clothes disturbed?" Witness says no. "I scarcely could see her boots. She looked as if she had been laid quietly down. Her clothes were not in the least rumpled." The coroner asks, "Was the blood in a liquid state?" The witness says, "Some was, and some was congealed. It extended close to the door. The part nearest to her throat was congealed." The coroner says, "Was any blood coming from the throat of that time?" The witness says, "I hardly like to say that, sir. If there was, it must have been a very small quantity. Dr. Blackwell, about 10 minutes after I got there, was the first doctor to arrive." The coroner asks, "Did anyone say whether the body had been touched?" The witness says no. Dr. Blackwell examined the body and afterwards the surrounding ground. Dr. Phillips arrived about 20 minutes forwards, but at that time I was at another part of the ground. Inspector Pinhorn arrived directly after the doctor arrived. When I got there, I had the gate shut. The coroner asks, "But did not the feet of the deceased touch the gate?" The witness says no. They were just behind it, and I was able to close the gates without disturbing the body. I put a constable at the gate and told him not to let anyone in or out. I then entered the club and, starting from the front door, examined the place. I turned my light on and had a look at the different people there, and examined a number of their hands and also their clothing to see if I could detect any marks of blood. I did not take up each one's hand. I should say there were about 15 to 20 persons in the club room on the ground floor. I then went into every room, including the one in which there was a stage, and I went behind it. A person was there who informed me he was the steward. The coroner asked, "You did not think to put him in charge of the front door?" Witness, "No, I did not. When further assistance came, a constable was put in charge of the front door. I did not see anyone leave by that entrance and could not say if it was locked. After I examined the club, I went into the yard and examined the cottages. I also went into the water closets. The occupiers of the cottages were all in bed when I knocked. A man came down partly dressed to let me in. Everyone I saw, except this one, was undressed." You can't even type right. I know, I think a lot of us are like that. I think it's funny though. The coroner asks, "There's a recess in the yard, is there not? Did you go there?" Witness says, "Yes, and I afterwards went there with Dr. Phillips. I examined the dustbin and dung heap. I noticed there was a hoarding, but I did not recollect looking over it. After that, I went and examined the steps and outside of Messrs. Henley's premises. I also looked through the window as the doors were fastened." The coroner says, "How long was it before the cottage doors were open?" The witness states, "Not long. The people seemed very frightened and wanted to know what was the matter. I told them nothing much as I did not want to frighten them. When I returned from there, Dr. Phillips and Chief Inspector West had arrived." The coroner asks, "Was there anything to prevent anyone escaping while you were examining the body?" Witness states, "It was quite possible as I was there by myself. There was a lot of confusion and everyone was looking towards the body." The coroner says, a person might have escaped before you arrived. Witness says, that is quite possible. I should think he got away before I got there and not afterwards. Inspector Reed says, how long was it before you passed that spot? Witness states, I was not on the beat, but I passed a commercial road end of the street some 6 or 7 minutes before I was called. When I was fetched, I was going in the direction of Burner Street. Constable Smith is on Burner Street beat. The constable who followed me down is on fixed point duty from 9 to 5 at the end of the Grove Street. All the fixed point men ceased their duty at 1 a.m., and then the men on the beats did the whole duty. Inspector Reed says, these men are fixed at certain places, so if a person wanted a constable, he would not have to go all the way to the station for one. The coroner says, did you see anything suspicious? Witness says, no. I saw lots of squabbles and rows, such as one sees on Saturday nights. I think I should be seeing anyone running from the gate of 40 Burner Street if I had been standing at the commercial road end of it. I cannot tell if the lamps on the plan are correct. Coroner says, I may mention there are 4 lamps between Commercial Road and Fairclough Street. Is the street as well lit as others in the neighborhood? The witness says, it is lit about as well as side streets generally are, but some I know are better lighted. The juryman says, I think that the street is lighted quite as well as any other. In further examination, the witness says, I remained on the yard for remainder of the night. I started to help convey the body to the mortuary, but I was fetched back. I think I'm going to end it there. My throat's actually getting a little sore, but that's just from reading. I was on another live today reading. I have to show you guys something I'm doing. So because of COVID and just being on lockdown, I almost went nuts, I swear to you. So I ordered all these things, like diamond paintings, and I've always wanted my own dollhouse. So I thought, where can I get one? Well, they're way too expensive. So I decided to build my own, and I did, and I painted it, and it is freaking awesome. So I thought, now what else can I do? I ordered furniture for this house, and it's so cute. Look at it. You have to put everything together and glue everything together. So there's the bed. Oh, and probably the funny part of this, funniest. Well, here's a tub. Here's a chair. Oh, where is it? That's a chair. That's another table. There's a vanity. There's chairs, chairs, chairs. This one I had to glue all together, but this is a toilet. That was hilarious. So I just got to paint them all, and then I got to place them in my dollhouse. I've always wanted one. Always wanted. So I'll have to show you the finished product when I'm done. Anyways, my point to that was, I still have stuff left over from that time, and so I'm doing them now, and I'm loving it. Like reading more books, getting into crystals, doing those diamond paintings. I'm still working on that. Have a good night, Jen. And then making this little furniture. And then my next thing I'm gonna do that I forgot I had is the pumpkin cart. I've always wanted a pumpkin carriage, so there it is. I have to put it all together and glue it together. I'm just having fun with it. Who knows? Maybe I'll start selling them and make money that way because they are very beautiful. Like when everything's done and painted and put together. I'll show you the house I did. It was all wood, and I had to glue everything together and put everything together, and then I had to paint it. So I'm just going to show you real quick. I don't care if I'm 39 years old or not, but so here's the house. I had to build it and put it all together and paint it. So I remember showing you, Teresa, but this is the finished part. I wish I could show you. There's the front. There's the other side. So then in the back, it's got stairs that I built, and now I gotta make the furniture and stuff to put in it. But yeah, I had so much fun making this. It's pretty big. And I always definitely wanted dollhouse. And I didn't hear that I'm 39. Can you just show yourself? Huh? Oh yeah, duh. That would be better. Sorry, I didn't even think of that. Thanks. There, that's better, right? All right, so there, oh my God, if I can get it straight. Okay, so there's a finished product, and there's one side of it, and then there's the other side of it. And then, like I said, the whole back, you can put stuff, you could put the furniture and stuff in. Like, here's the stairs. Right there, aren't they? Nope. The stairs, see them? Stairs are right here. Goes upstairs, downstairs. Yeah, it's way better, eh? Seriously, Dad, that's bullshit. So anyways, I had a great time. It was all just lasered out wood, and I had to put it all together, glue it together, and then I painted it. So that's the end result of that. And now I get to fill it up with cool things like, I don't know, this cute little toilet that goes with the tub. I'm just having fun with it. There's like even a bench. There's tables. They're just, I don't know, I love it. So I'm gonna paint all those too. There's like a little vanity too. Yeah, that's definitely better. Anyways, I just want to let you know I'm having fun. I don't know. Maybe I can start selling them on Etsy. I just don't know if I'm gonna let them go. I want them free. I was like, I don't know. I've always wanted a dollhouse since I was a child, but they're so expensive. They're like $500 built from scratch. So I decided to do my own, and believe it or not, I got all this stuff from Amazon. I bought so much stuff when I had the money when we were all in lockdown because I would have went crazy. Not only did I start this channel, but I also had this stuff to do when I wasn't going live or making videos. So I was doing this at night because I was going, you couldn't leave your house at all. They were, if you got caught in a car with more than one person, you were screwed. It was just like, what? All right. Now I'm going to finish building my beautiful stuff here. It's a lot of work, but the reward is great. So here's all the furniture. And when you get it, it looks like this. So you literally have to put everything together. Anyways, it's fun. So a lot of the stuff I didn't get to because I was more focused on my YouTube channel. You love what I've done with my house. All right, I'm gonna get off here. I'm going to start building more furniture. Plus, I want to paint. I got like pink, turquoise. I got some gold. I was thinking for the tub, I was gonna make it like, I don't know, nice golden tub or something with like white feet. Yeah, I don't know. I'll figure something. All right. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for letting me brag. And tomorrow, what do I have tomorrow? Wait, I think tomorrow's Nelly, the 10 days in a madhouse, I'm pretty sure. Saturday, I'm going to do the new book I got with all the letters from the attic in a suitcase. Like this one's got photos and everything. I can't wait to read it. This is a bookstore. Housing Works. Wow, thank you for your purchase. Help support Housing Works' mission to end the dual crisis of homelessness and HIV and AIDS. Isn't that crazy? Because that's all I've been talking about is the AIDS crisis and all that stuff. So by buying this, I helped. That's awesome. They didn't tell me that until, well, I see the bookmark. Sweet. Okay, you guys have a great night. Yeah, okay. Nice booty shot, eh? All right. I'll probably see you guys over there. Well, I'll be listening while I'm building. All right, you guys have a good night. Bye.